Alright, here it goes. My name's Dave, and I guess you could say I'm here to figure out what the hell to do. My wife, Sarah, and I have been married for 10 years, together for 12. We've got 2 kids, and up until a few months ago, I thought we were solid. Sure, we had our ups and downs like any couple, but I honestly believed we were happy. Or at least I was. Then things started changing. Sarah's behavior got weird. She'd always been glued to her phone, but now it was like her phone had practically become part of her hand. I'd catch her smiling at messages, only to have her shove her phone in her pocket if she noticed me watching. She started going out with her friends a lot more, at least that's what she said she was doing. Late nights out, more trips to the gym, buying new clothes that didn't quite fit the look she'd been going for the past few years. I figured maybe she just wanted to feel better about herself, but something felt off. I pushed it out of my mind for a while, told myself I was just being paranoid. We'd been together for so long, and I trusted her. But that trust started to crack little by little, and I had a growing feeling I couldn't ignore. So yeah, that's where I was, paranoid, anxious, trying to convince myself that everything was fine even as every instinct was telling me something was very, very wrong. It all came crashing down one evening when Sarah left her phone on the kitchen counter. I don't usually go through her stuff, I've never been that guy. But this time, I couldn't help it. That little voice in the back of my mind was practically screaming at me. So I picked it up, telling myself that I'd just take a quick look to ease my mind. First thing I noticed was a text notification from someone named Jake. Not a name I recognized, and definitely not one of her usual friends. My gut sank. I opened the conversation, and there it was, messages that were unmistakably flirtatious, some that went way beyond flirtatious. They were talking about their last meetup, reminiscing about the amazing sex they'd had, and planning their next, secret, rendezvous. I stood there, reading each message in disbelief. She'd been meeting up with this guy for months, lying to me about girls' nights and gym sessions. I felt like my whole world was spinning, like the ground had been ripped out from under me. It was like this sickening mix of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak all hitting me at once. I didn't even know what to do. I just sat down, staring at her phone, trying to piece it all together, wondering how long I'd been in the dark. The worst part was that this wasn't just some casual fling. There was emotion in those texts, real connection. She'd lied to me about so much, and in that moment, it felt like our entire life together had been one big joke to her. By the time Sarah came home, I was still sitting there with her phone in my hand, numb but ready for a confrontation. The second she walked through the door, she knew something was wrong. I just looked at her, held up her phone, and asked, "Who's Jake?" Her face went pale, but only for a second. She quickly switched to this defensive, irritated look and said, "Why are you going through my phone? Don't you trust me?" She tried to turn it around on me, acting as if I was the problem here. But I wasn't backing down. I told her I'd seen the messages, that I knew about the affair, and all her excuses fell apart. She tried claiming Jake was just a friend, and that they'd never actually done anything. I couldn't believe she was lying to my face after everything I'd read. I told her I'd seen it all, the messages about the sex, the plans to meet up. Her reaction? She got angry. She called me paranoid and controlling, tried saying that I was blowing things out of proportion. But when I pushed harder, she finally admitted it. She said it was just something physical, and that she'd felt trapped in our marriage. Then she had the nerve to say it was my fault for not being exciting enough for her, for not paying enough attention. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was like she'd rewritten our whole marriage to make herself the victim, painting me as some neglectful husband who'd driven her to cheat. By the end of it, she was in full defensive mode, refusing to take any real responsibility. It felt like I was talking to the confrontation was like a grenade going off in my mind. I felt a whirlwind of emotions, anger, sadness, betrayal, but above all, I felt a profound sense of loss. I had built my life around this woman, and suddenly, everything I thought I knew about our relationship was shattered. After Sarah stormed off to the bedroom, I found myself pacing around the living room, replaying every moment of our marriage in my head. Had I really been that blind? I'd seen the signs, felt the distance between us grow, but I'd ignored my instincts in favor of comfort. My heart felt heavy, like a rock lodged in my chest. The kids were asleep upstairs, blissfully unaware of the storm raging beneath our roof, and I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. How could she do this to our family? I tried to convince myself that maybe we could work through it, that we could go to counseling and fix what was broken. But every time I thought about it, the anger surged back. How could I trust her again? The image of her with Jake, laughing, touching, being intimate, flashed in my mind, and it made me feel sick. I had poured my love into this relationship, and she had taken that and thrown it away for a cheap thrill. The next few days were a blur of tension and hurt. Sarah acted as if everything was fine, trying to downplay the situation. She made half-hearted apologies, but quickly switched back to deflecting blame onto me. The more she did that, the angrier I became. I felt like I was being gaslighted, like she was trying to rewrite reality so that I'd feel guilty for her actions. Finally, I reached a breaking point. I sat down with her again, this time more composed but resolute. I told her I didn't know if I could continue living in a lie. I felt trapped in a toxic cycle of love and betrayal. My heart was in pieces, and every word she spoke felt like salt on my wounds. I knew that if we were going to move forward, things had to change dramatically, starting with her acknowledging the pain she caused, instead of deflecting it back to me. But deep down, I was starting to realize that I might not want to fix this. The betrayal ran too deep, and my heart was slowly leading me toward a different conclusion. Maybe it was time to think about my own happiness, about what I wanted for once. After that intense confrontation, I spent days wrestling with my emotions. I felt like I was living in a fog, trying to navigate the aftermath of the bombshell Sarah had dropped. I didn't want to make any rash decisions, but every time I looked at her, all I saw was the woman who had betrayed my trust. I started to realize that the foundation of our marriage had crumbled, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to rebuild it. One night, as I lay in bed wide awake while Sarah snored beside me, I thought about what life could look like if I decided to end things. The prospect was terrifying and liberating at the same time. I imagined a future without her lies, a chance to start fresh, where I could find someone who genuinely appreciated me. I knew the kids would be affected, but I also understood that staying in a broken marriage would set a poor example for them about love and respect. The next morning, I decided it was time for a serious talk. I sat Sarah down and told her straight up that I was done. I needed space to think about everything, to figure out what my next steps would be. I said I couldn't live in a home filled with lies and half-hearted apologies any longer. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, I thought I saw genuine fear flicker across her face. She tried to argue, saying that we could work things out if we just went to therapy, but I felt an overwhelming sense of resolve. "You can't just throw everything away and then expect me to trust you again," I said firmly. "You made your choices, and now I need to make mine." The conversation turned into a back and forth, filled with tears, accusations, and desperate pleas for forgiveness. But I held my ground. It was painful to see her cry, but deep down, I felt a sense of empowerment. I was reclaiming my life, taking control of my own happiness for the first time in a long while. In the days that followed, I began taking concrete steps towards separation. I started looking for an apartment, and reached out to a lawyer to understand my options. I knew it wouldn't be easy: finances, custody arrangements, the kids, but I also felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. I was moving toward a resolution, toward a future where I could heal and eventually find happiness again. I still had a long road ahead, filled with uncertainty and challenges, but I was ready to embrace whatever came next. No more lies, no more betrayal. It was time to prioritize myself and my kids, to create a life built on honesty and trust. As I navigated the process of separating from Sarah, I found myself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. Each day brought new challenges and reminders of the life we'd built together, but there was also a growing sense of relief. I realized how much of myself I had lost while trying to keep our marriage intact, and now I was slowly rediscovering who I was outside of that toxic environment. The kids sensed the tension but didn't fully understand what was happening. I made sure to keep things calm and normal for them as much as possible. I tried to spend quality time with them, taking them to the park or watching movies at home. I wanted to show them that despite the upheaval, their dad was still there for them, still committed to being a good parent. I knew it would be tough on them, but I also believed it was better than living in a home filled with secrets and resentment. Sarah, on the other hand, seemed to spiral after our decision to separate. She put on a brave face, but I could see the cracks beneath her facade. She called and texted frequently, trying to convince me to come back, to give her another chance. She'd talk about how she was going to change, how she wanted to fix things, but it all felt empty to me. I could hear the desperation in her voice, but I couldn't allow myself to be swayed by guilt or sympathy. Through all this, I began to seek support. I found a therapist who helped me unpack the emotional fallout of the betrayal and guided me through the healing process. It was comforting to have someone to talk to, someone who understood what I was going through. I learned that healing isn't linear, it's messy and complicated. Some days I felt empowered, and other days I felt like I was back at square one. Ultimately, I recognized that I had to forgive myself for not seeing the signs sooner, for putting up with Sarah's behavior for so long. I had a long road ahead, but I was determined to create a life that was authentic and fulfilling. I learned that I deserved better, not just for myself, but for my kids as well. Looking back now, I realize that betrayal can shatter your world, but it can also lead to unexpected growth. I want to share this with anyone going through a similar situation. If you find yourself in a relationship filled with lies and deceit, don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. It's okay to prioritize your happiness. You are worthy of love that is genuine and true. Trust your instincts, and know that you can rebuild your life, even when it feels impossible. As the months rolled on, the pain of my marriage's collapse started to transform into something more manageable. I realized that the emotional turmoil I had faced wasn't just about losing Sarah. It was about reclaiming my own identity. I had spent so long focusing on our relationship, trying to keep it afloat, that I had neglected my own needs, dreams, and desires. Now, with each passing day, I felt more like myself. I dove into new hobbies that I had shelved for years, things I had once loved but had abandoned to focus on being a good husband and father. I picked up painting again, something that had always brought me joy. I started jogging in the mornings, relishing the endorphins that came with each run. I even began attending a local book club, something I never thought I would do. It felt good to connect with others, to share ideas and thoughts without the weight of my past hanging over me. But the most significant change came in my relationships with my kids. I focused on being present for them, listening to their fears and anxieties about the changes in our family. I made it a point to create new traditions, like Friday movie nights and weekend hikes. We'd spend time together exploring parks and talking about everything from school to their feelings about the divorce. I could see the relief in their eyes as they realized they still had a dad who loved them unconditionally. I also learned to set boundaries with Sarah. I realized that although she was still trying to manipulate my emotions, I had the power to control my reactions. I began to respond to her texts with kindness but firmness, making it clear that I wouldn't engage in conversations about our relationship. I needed to focus on healing, not reopening old wounds. I even started to see a new side of her, one that was scared and vulnerable. It wasn't my job to fix her or her feelings, but it was eye-opening to witness her struggle with the consequences of her actions. In the midst of all this, I found myself contemplating the idea of dating again. The thought terrified me, but it also excited me. I began exploring dating apps cautiously, dipping my toes into the water. I met a few people, some were great, some not so much, but each interaction taught me more about what I wanted in a partner. I realized that I craved honesty and connection more than anything. I learned that love shouldn't come with asterisks or conditions, and I began to trust again, slowly but surely. It was a long journey, but I felt hopeful. I knew that I had weathered the storm of betrayal and had emerged on the other side, stronger and more resilient than before. Through all the pain, I had discovered my worth, my strength, and my ability to rise above the chaos. I was no longer defined by Sarah's actions or our broken marriage. I was Dave, a father, a friend, an artist, and a man ready to embrace whatever life had in store for me next. As I settled into this new chapter of my life, I felt a sense of clarity I hadn't experienced in years. I had learned that betrayal could shatter your sense of self but also serve as a catalyst for personal growth. Every experience, from the heartbreak to the moments of joy, had shaped me into a better version of myself. With my kids flourishing and my own sense of self-worth on the rise, I started to dream again. I thought about my aspirations and the paths I wanted to explore. I'd always wanted to travel, to see the world beyond the confines of my routine life. So I made a plan. I would take the kids on a trip next summer, somewhere new and exciting. It felt empowering to create new memories, to redefine what family looked like for us. I also took my emotional healing seriously. Therapy had helped me confront my feelings and understand the root of my pain. I began reading self-help books, joining support groups, and connecting with others who had gone through similar experiences. I found comfort in their stories, and I realized that I wasn't alone in this journey. We all had scars, but we also had the strength to heal. As for dating, I approached it with caution but also with an open heart. I went out with a few wonderful women, and while none of them turned into anything serious, I appreciated the chance to connect and rediscover what I wanted in a partner. Each date was a reminder that love could be kind, honest, and fulfilling, something I hadn't experienced with Sarah in a long time. One evening, while enjoying dinner with my kids, they surprised me with a heartfelt conversation about our new life. They expressed how much they loved spending quality time together, and how they felt safe and happy. It was a pivotal moment for me. Hearing their laughter and seeing their smiles reaffirmed that I was on the right path. We were healing as a family, building a new life grounded in love, respect, and understanding. In the end, I came to appreciate that sometimes life takes unexpected turns, and while those turns may be painful, they can also lead to unexpected beauty. I learned that it's okay to grieve what was lost but also to celebrate what lies ahead. So, here I am, Dave, a man who survived betrayal, emerged with scars, but also with newfound wisdom and strength. To anyone reading this who might find themselves in a similar situation, know that it's never too late to reclaim your life. Your story is still being written, and while it might feel dark now, there is light ahead. Embrace the journey, trust yourself, and remember that you are worthy of love that is true and real.